Yeah, that would be cool. You know what else would be cool though? And speaking of selecting things, if you could
Yeah,
select alternate app stores.
it would be interesting. So yeah, oh, this has been
So,
an interesting week in regards to this kind of stuff.
yeah, so Epic Games, the uh the bad guys of the PC gaming space, and I don't know why they're the bad guy. Like I get that they bought exclusive games temporarily, but like
Yeah,
they also gave us like literally it was Epic that got us cross-platform play.
yeah. They were the main push for it.
Literally it was Epic and before they had even launched the store, their threat of bringing a store at a much lower cost to developers that caused Steam to drop their price for games that had sold enough on their store.
Yep. And they've
Now,
helped developers drastically.
mhm,
Some indie developers and stuff like that, and that's been one of the focuses of their new engine too, is to help small developers. So they've done a
yeah,
lot of good.
now what we're seeing is that they are going to war with Google and Apple.
Yeah,
So what happened this week was Epic dropped an update in the game. Now this was not published like an update through the store. So like likely what happened was that they actually put the code in for this like in a previous update
yeah,
and then just changed a server side flag to make it go through now
yeah,
so that it
yeah,
could pass through validation. Because if they would have put this in as an actual update, Apple would have just blocked the update and so would Google.
yeah,
Um, but what they did was they added an alternate payment option into the store. And this was a way to buy your V-Bucks without paying Google or Apple the 30% split. And what they did was they dropped the price of the V-Bucks by 20% on Android, iOS, PC, Mac, Xbox, and PlayStation. But not if you bought them on the or through the iOS payment method or the Android payment method.
yeah,
And the whole intent of this was passing along the savings to consumers. Now, the reason I put that in quotes, despite the fact that I generally like Epic, is that they didn't pass along the savings on or on console.
yeah,
Console charges the same split, but
yep.
they're saying that they're passing along some magical savings that they're not getting.
Yeah, well,
Um,
right. Yeah, it's weird. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm not understanding this right, but on console, when you use the alternate store, you don't get the discount, right? It's not like with
no, 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 no. So on console, there is no alternate payment method. They only push this through on iOS and Android. They're
I
giving the
see.
discount. They're literally giving the discount to you on every platform unless you pay through the iOS or the Android official
Oh,
payment
okay.
methods. And
But
so
if
that
you're,
means that they
huh?
are losing. So, like, it makes sense that they can afford to pass along savings on the Epic Store and on their own payment methods on
Yeah.
Android and iOS. But there's no savings for them to pass along on console, and they're still dropping the price.
And we're sure
And
with
so,
console, right, that there is that 30% cut for in-game transactions, not
yes,
just for the game purchase. Okay.
unless they worked out some special deal, which they are not talking about, and they're not acting like
Yeah.
they are.
Which they have
And
before, but they usually talk about it.
well, and then also like with the antitrust scrutinies that are going around, special deals are not something that I think
Yeah.
anybody would be making right now.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so from what it looks like, they are essentially just in order to put pressure on Google and Apple
Yeah.
and make it look like they are just uh, essentially they're to put pressure on them. They're losing money on PC or not on PC on console and lying to consumers that they're passing along savings. Now it's cool that they're willing to lose money to make a point and to throw some shade at Google and Apple, but I
Yeah.
don't think that they
Yeah.
should be essentially lying. Like if you look at their page about the price drops, it doesn't say anything about the fact that they're just taking a little bit less of a profit
Yeah.
on console. They're literally lying and saying they're passing along the savings, which is just such a confusing thing for me because overall I agree with what they're trying to do, and I don't necessarily disagree. I think that they could be more effective in other ways, but I don't necessarily disagree with how they're going about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Um,
exactly.
and
It's
so it's just weird that they're essentially like lying about the console side of things, and rather than trying to get console to drop their pricing as well.
right.
And I
Yeah.
get that
Yeah.
like Sony has like a small like a 5% investment in Epic now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like that's going to really hurt Epic's case if a 5% investment in them is enough for them to sway not doing this on console, but they are doing this on Android and iOS. Like if Apple bought
Yeah.
5%, would they stop?
Right, yeah, and so it's a little bit weird, and I don't personally see the consoles being less predatory in a way, with the cut than iOS and Android. Being
Especially on Android, where on Android, not just can you run your app through another service or another app store,
yeah, or no
Epic
app store.
launched Epic launched Fortnite without using an app store on
Yeah,
Android. That
yeah,
was how it launched. Like you got the beta on Samsung devices. They literally made deals with OEMs and they didn't go about using the store. And
hmm
it still reached the point where for whatever reason they had to cave and switch to Android. And yet they're trying to say that they will, like, one of their end goals with this is forcing Apple to allow other app stores.
but
And the thing is that they're saying that they'll release their own app store if they do that. But why haven't they done that on Android? Because
yeah,
if my goal was to create a store to make my business money, and I was going to make one for Android anyway, and my goal was to make it so that regulators would force Apple to open up the ability for me to make a store there. Well, you obviously can't just like develop both at the exact same time anyway, because they're very different platforms and their
yeah,
games that are on those platforms are different. So the most logical thing would be develop for Android, your app store, release it,
yeah.
gain some market share, show that it would actually make a meaningful difference for competition,
Have some level of proof. Yeah, yeah,
and then go to regulators and say, look at what we can't do on Apple. Or if it doesn't work, say, look at why we need Google and Apple to be forced to change their pricing because
yeah,
app stores don't work. You really
yeah,
think that if they can't make an app store or even just the biggest game in the world, if they can't make that exist off the app store on Android, you really think that's going to work on iOS where nobody that uses that is
yeah,
like used to downloading elsewhere and nobody that uses that, like, it's generally a less tech savvy platform.
yeah. And so
And so
having
that's,
a level of proof that, like, hey, this doesn't work, so we need a fix, I
yeah,
think would be
either it
the
works and
result.
they can prove it and pressure Apple that way, or it
hmm
doesn't work and they can prove it and pressure regulators to drop pricing.
And I think the likelihood is that it wouldn't work.
Oh yeah, if
Um,
they can't get Fortnite to work off the App Store, I don't. The
yeah,
thing that with mobile games is that they don't have the types of games that would pull people to other platforms in the same way. There's a
yeah,
few select big games that I think could probably be a bit of a pull, but
right,
not enough to make another App Store work. And so at
yeah,
that point,
yeah.
you don't have the advantage of buying exclusives like they've done on PC.
Well, then it's also harder for it to integrate with like a Google and Apple's integrated like Game Center stuff.
Oh, they wouldn't do that. I mean,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it would be just like having a game exist off, off Steam. You don't
Right,
integrate with that.
exactly. So I feel like,
Um,
but they like if they're willing to lose money to prove a point on console, they're losing money, like you said, or in some ways, they are making less money. Um, like I feel kind of like, why aren't they willing to lose money by paying their developers to build an app store that can then prove that it doesn't work?
especially if they're claiming that the end goal is to do that anyway.
Yeah, right,
If
exactly.
your
And so
goal
it's
is to
just
build your own app store,
then
then
do it.
build your own app store where you can already do that.
Yeah. There's nothing on Android stopping you from that, and you can make the argument of side loading apps, but like, yeah, Amazon's App Store and stuff like that have gotten around that by saying, hey, a couple clicks and you can turn on side loading apps. It's not hard.
Yeah.
Like they
And
have a
then the other
quick
thing is
little instruction about it.
like I know that I think they're one of the things they're like in their lawsuit with Google is
Uh huh.
alleging that Google is blocking them from making deals with OEMs about app stores. But from what I had read into that, what it was in specific that they're going after is that LG and Google had, separate from the requirements for having the Play Store, this is not a part of that,
Yeah.
had made a separate contract where Google was paying them. I don't know if it was, what all the details were, but essentially there was a separate arrangement not tied into the Play services that LG had agreed not to use other app store or to preload other app stores,
Right.
which is fine because you know what? Epic would probably be signing a contract with LG if they could to have their app on there. So if they can sign a contract to do that, then Google can sign a contract to not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they've already made partnerships with Samsung. Like if Epic can do that, then they can do that with their game store. And let's be real, Samsung is much more meaningful than LG as far as market share.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I mean they are the biggest smartphone
Like if
manufacturer.
you can already make deals with Samsung for Fortnite, then you could probably grow your game store pretty fast if you had compelling games. And that
Yeah.
is what I think is the issue, is
Yeah.
that for a game store on a mobile platform, there isn't compelling games right now.
Yeah.
What
I
I
think that's
think
going
that
to
Epic
change.
could do is I think that Epic could leverage Unreal Engine and leverage investments in indie developers. And I think that they could try and bring some bigger games to mobile, because we know that, like,
Yeah.
higher end Android phones can make good game. Like, you can play some pretty damn good games. We know that ARM is no longer as restrictive of a processor for games as it used to be.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Developers are used to making games for ARM. You can prove that with the Switch.
Yep. Yep. So
So
it seems like in some ways like a load of excuses, right?
yeah,
I don't know.
it's one of those weird things where, like, I completely support the end goal, and I think that if they were also going the route of making their own app store, I would fully support what they're doing. But it's just a
Right.
weird thing where they have what, in my opinion, would be a much more effective way to show regulators that there's an actual problem, and they're not doing that.
Right, and I think that's the important end goal, and it's just a little bit weird because I feel like they've had a lot of good tactics to do that sort of thing on other platforms and in other
Mhm.
instances, and they're just going about this one incorrectly. And I don't know, it's a little bit odd, and as a result of this, right, Apple and Google both completely banned them from their
Yes.
stores. Yeah,
Yeah. Fortnite is banned, and I don't realistically see it coming back anytime soon, because it's not like they can just say they removed the code and then Google and Apple will be like, okay, cool, you no longer violate the rules, because they put in this code stealthily. So Google and Apple have no reason to trust that they won't do it again.
yeah, yeah. So it'd be hard for them to re-enable it. It's it's weird, and I guess one thing I wanted to touch on here is I feel like there are a lot of people that are like rooting for Epic here, and I'm rooting for the cause that they're aiming for, but like they're going about it wrong, and instead of saying thank you Epic for suing these companies and trying to do this, I think the solution would be thank you for your goal, but you're not gonna win this.
Yeah.
Like
Like,
it's
if
just
their
weird.
goal was just the lower costs, then I think that this would not necessarily be a bad strategy.
Yeah,
But when they're literally trying to claim that they are trying to free Apple users from the tyranny of the App Store, and that
yeah,
they are so adamant on making another App Store, like, again, prove it can work, because you already
yeah.
said, when you first launched the Epic Store, you said you'd bring us an Android Epic Store, and you haven't.
Yeah, and they already have this platform and server level stuff for it. It's just a matter of coding something that connects to the same
Yeah,
service. And
because, like,
it's weird.
I would love to be able to more, because you already can get other app stores on iOS without jailbreaking. There is a way to get Alt Store.
Yeah.
It's
It's
doable.
more complicated
Um,
than Android, but yeah.
yeah, but, like, there are ways to do it. I would love for there to be easier ways for me as a power user to install apps outside of the App Store.
Yes.
Um,
But
and so it's like that
power
would be
user is the
great,
key
but
word there.
yeah, but, like, really what it comes down to is, like, even if they have that, like, it's not going to be meaningful competition to force Apple to change any of their App Store policies outside of that. So let's say regulators come in. Let's
Hmm.
say Epic is successful in putting pressure on regulators to put pressure on Apple, and regulators tell Apple, okay, you're now required to allow other app stores. If they just do that, that would actually probably be best case scenario for Apple.
Yeah.
Because you know what that wouldn't do? That wouldn't put any actual pressure or and have any sort of meaningful change on App Store market share in any country other than China.
Yeah.
Like, that would probably really help Tencent in China,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't change things in the US or Europe or
Canada,
Canada,
yeah, all the yeah.
any of the other major markets.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I
It's a
don't
little
get
weird.
this whole idea that, because, like, I understand the idea that competition is good for consumers,
Yes.
but the reality of the situation is that more app stores being allowed doesn't actually, in this case, increase competition.
Right.
App stores are at this point so entrenched that the focus needs to be on regulating so that the apps on them are appropriately competitive. But this
Right.
idea that you're going to come in with another app store and all of a sudden compete is not realistic.
It's not realistic. No, no. And kind of going back to what I was saying about People that are rooting Epic on this, it's a little bit weird to me because there's been other stuff that Epic has done that has actually worked, been a good tactic, and been good for the gaming environment that people complained about. And exclusives,
Yeah.
like you said, is one of those where they're like, Epic's paying for these exclusives. And I mean, I'm not a fan of exclusivity. Like, I like things that are available everywhere and that I'm not forced to use a specific store. But at the same time, the purpose of what they were doing there was to try and reduce the cost for developers and make things better for developers. And they have influenced the market drastically in that way. But people complained about it. But now they're doing something that is very unlikely to really be that successful and do what we really want to have happen, and people are all like really happy for them. And so I think it kind of in some ways leads to some of the misinformation when people are making judgments on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to the fact that like there's a reason they chose to do this so soon after the antitrust hearings.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to, is they're trying to take advantage of the antitrust hearings, which is a smart way to do it. But again, I think that just all I'll say on this to end the topic is, like, if the end goal for Epic that they're claiming is true of creating another app store, then create the other app store where you can do that and prove that it'll work. Prove that it will create meaningful change, because that would be the easiest way to win over regulators. Either you're successful and you win, or you lose and you win. No matter what, you win by going that route. Whereas this, I don't know if it will work.
Yeah, I don't know if it will either. So we'll see how it goes. I would like to see lower costs from these stores, on developers for sure. But that doesn't seem to be, the goal that they're pushing for, right?
Like when you look at just pushing for lower costs, like, I guess, how do you decide as a regulator what the right cost is? Because like Google and or Android and iOS are so fundamentally different in so many ways. Like, Google makes money from so many other things on the platform, as far as like using your data for search, and Apple is so focused on privacy that realistically it would make the most sense that Apple's App Store cut is a little bit higher than Android's, because they need to make money elsewhere. But how do you decide what that right amount is?
Yeah. And even then, like, I definitely feel like 30% is in a lot of ways high, right? Like,
oh, I agree.
Like, because it's like, oh, here's, like, we're providing you a storefront and we're providing you servers to store your app that's 50 megabytes or 10 megabytes, right?
Well, and we're providing you APIs, we're providing you new tools for development, we're providing curation, we're providing...
However, so a lot of that stuff is provided even with free stuff, right? Like for free apps, APIs and stuff like that.
Yeah, but they make their money from in-app purchases and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, I suppose.
You can release an app for completely free and not have ads and stuff.
Yeah.
But like,
it's not common.
That is not common. Like, most developers that are spending time making apps do it with the intention on making some kind of money.
Yeah, which just makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you're investing time in something that other people are utilizing, most situations would want to make money from it.
Yeah.
And it's like, so they're providing all of this stuff, and they're, it's like, how do you, I guess, put a price on everything from the actual storefront and servers to the curation to the APIs to the user base to all of that.
Yeah.
And do it in a way that's not going to be so low, for example, on iOS, that it harms Apple's goal of putting a focus on privacy, but you put it low enough that it doesn't harm developers as much as it might otherwise be.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
And that's where it's like, again, if Epic can make an alternate app store at a lower price work, then that would be the best case scenario, because then they could compete for what that price should be.
Right. And in fact, in some ways they could also use that as a there would be a direct incentive to use their store, because it's like, oh, you can get it through the regular store too, but you have to pay more. So it's like, oh, okay. So, and they could even advertise, like, in game, right, when you're purchasing V-Bucks, like, if you'd like to get these for cheaper, go download the Epic store. Yeah.
Nope, can't do that.
That's not allowed?
Not on iOS, and I don't think on Android.
I feel like maybe that should change. But But even so,
Yeah,
people would
and
know
see, that's one of
online.
those things where it's like maybe that is one of the things that could change that would have a positive impact on price competition
Yeah.
without running into the same issue that theoretically an alternate purchase method in app may have to, and maybe just allowing alternate purchase methods in app would be a better way to do it too. Like there's all these different things that I think are better solutions than just an alternate app store that's not going to work.
Yeah, I think so too, definitely. So, I guess we'll see what comes of it. I'm sure we'll have more to report on this probably next week
Yeah.
and the week after. It'll be a kind of a rolling topic.
Yeah, and
But
this was a big thing. Like when this first dropped, I was like, when I first saw that Epic had pushed in their alternate payment method, I was like, did Apple change App Store rules? Like, what the
yeah,
fuck? That seems like a wild thing to change by just letting Epic drop it. Like, it seems like the
yeah,
type of thing, especially due to regulatory concerns, that they would have uh, dropped like as an update and said, "Hey, developers, this is a change.
hmm
You can now implement this."
but instead they just like
Um,
Epic just did it.
yeah.
Yeah, kind of crazy.
So
Well, I
we'll
think that
see. I mean, I hope it drives prices down for developers, and I hope that it opens up like alternate purchase methods in app. Um,
yeah.
I just don't think like an alternate app store is actually going to have any meaningful impact on competition, and so I really hope that the end result isn't just regulators force alternate app stores to be allowed.
I agree. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there needs to be more that goes into it for sure.